EU leaders sign off on who they want to take the top jobs at the European Union for the next 5 years.
US President Joe Biden and his Republican rival Donald Trump face off in the first tense election debate of the season.
EU leaders have finally signed off on who they choose to take the top jobs at the European Union for the next 5 years, following a few weeks of tense negotiations. Ursula von der Leyen has been proposed as President of the European Commission for a second term, former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa as President of the European Council, and Prime Minister of Estonia Kaja Kallas as the EU's foreign policy chief. Von der Leyen will now be presented to the European Parliament for voting, where she needs the support of 361 MEPs to vote in favour of her to be re-elected.
I would plain and simply like to express my gratitude to the leaders who endorsed my nomination for a second mandate as President of the European Commission. And I'm very honoured and I'm delighted to share this very special moment, hopefully soon on screen, Antonio Costa, but also my dear friend Kaja Kallas.
However, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni expressed strong dissatisfaction with the process, saying it didn't fully take into account the rise of hard-right parties like hers in the European Parliament elections. She abstained in the nomination of von der Leyen and voted against the nomination of Kaja Kallas and Antonio Costa. There's concern that her rejection is a sign of turbulent times ahead for the EU.
Indeed, Giorgia Meloni abstained. And I think it is very important to work well in the European Council with the Prime Minister, with Italy, like with all other member states. So this is a principle for me which I followed all the time.
The next hurdle for Ursula von der Leyen is the trickiest. The votes in the European Parliament for her re-election are wafer thin and nothing is guaranteed. She said she wants to work with the coalition of the Greens, the Socialists and the Liberals, but she'll likely have to look further afield to potentially the far right, led by Giorgia Meloni, which will upset the coalition. It's a secret ballot, and if she loses by even one vote, it appears there is no plan B. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
US President Joe Biden and his Republican rival Donald Trump face off in the first 10th election debate of the season in Atlanta, attempting to convince voters ahead of the November election. The two candidates laid out their dramatically different views.
Every time that Zelensky comes to this country, he walks away with $60 billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. It should have never happened.
About the Israel-Hamas war, Biden promoted a ceasefire, whereas Trump said that Israel should finish the job and accused Biden of acting like a Palestinian. Both candidates got personal.
The crimes that you are still charged with, and think of all the civil penalties you have. How many billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties for molesting a woman in public? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Ukraine was one of the many topics on the table, a debate where Biden was considered weak even by the Democrats.
Just days before France's first-round snap elections to choose all 577 members of the National Assembly, French television has hosted a debate featuring three major party and coalition leaders. Prime Minister Gabriel Attal of the ruling Renaissance Party, National Rally President Jordan Bardella and Olivier Faure, representing the New Popular Front coalition, took part. Purchasing power and domestic security were debated, but it was the war in Ukraine that dominated. Jordan Bardella said he wouldn't let Russian imperialism absorb an allied state like Ukraine, but ruled out sending French troops to fight.
Donc ma position, elle est très simple sur ce conflit. Je l'ai défendue tout au long de la campagne européenne. Elle n'a jamais varié. C'est celle d'un soutien à l'Ukraine et d'éviter une escalade avec la Russie, qui est, je le rappelle, une puissance nucléaire. Par conséquent, si demain je suis Premier ministre du pays,
la question.
Il n'y aura pas de soldats français qui sera envoyé sur le sol ukrainien.
That was an apparent rebuttal to President Emmanuel Macron's remarks in May, in which he said he hadn't ruled out putting French boots on the ground in Ukraine. Olivier Faure also blasted Macron's remark, saying not even the Ukrainians expected French troops to fight alongside them.
Il y a des lignes rouges. L'envoi de troupes au sol, c'est absolument pas demandé, y compris par Zelensky ou par les Ukrainiens. Donc c'est absolument inutile. Et quand le président de la République l'a proposé, il a simplement réussi à diviser les Européens.
La France à l'égard de nos...
He insisted that the new Popular Front coalition is against French troop deployments, but isn't opposed to sending long-range missiles to Ukraine. But Macron's position was defended by his Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal.
Quand on se bat pour l'Ukraine, on se bat pour défendre nos valeurs, on se bat pour défendre leur liberté, mais on se bat aussi pour notre quotidien. Ce que le président de la République a fait, c'est qu'il a simplement rappelé que face à un Vladimir Poutine qui ne fixe aucune ligne rouge, si nous commencions par nous fixer des lignes rouges, alors nous ne rendions pas service à l'Ukraine. C'est la seule chose qu'il a rappelé.
The snap parliamentary elections were called by Emmanuel Macron on June the 9th, the night his Renaissance party lost big to the far-right National Rally in the EU elections. The first round of voting takes place on June 30th, with the second round scheduled for July the 7th.
Iranians went to the polls on Friday to cast their vote in the country's presidential election. Former President Ibrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash in May, triggering a snap election to find his replacement. The contest is split three ways, with the main contenders including Mustafa Pourmahadi, a Shiite cleric accused of human rights violations. The second hardliner is Parliament Speaker and former senior nuclear negotiator Saeed Jalili. Then there's little-known reformist Masoud Pezeshkian, a candidate mulling the revival of Iran's nuclear deal with world powers. Pezeshkian has also expressed wanting to have positive relations with the West and that no inhuman or invasive behaviour should be made against Iranian women. In the capital of Tehran, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei cast his ballot. The 85-year-old has final say on all state matters, but presidents can bend towards confrontation or negotiations with the West. More than 61 million Iranians over the age of 18 are eligible to vote in the election, with voting centres closing at 6 p.m. on Friday.
At least 5 people have been killed and 5 others injured when a train collided with a bus in southwestern Slovakia. The Slovak railway company ZSSK said more than 100 passengers were on board the Eurocity train travelling from the Czech capital Prague to the Hungarian capital Budapest. Video footage from the scene showed the engine of the train on fire, but officials said none of the passengers were injured. Railway officials said the bus involved in the crash had been badly damaged and split in two.
Ako prvé, na miesto sa dostavili hasičský a záchranný zbor Nové Zámky, potom šúranie Nitra. Mali sme tu približne asi 30 zasahujúcich príslušníkov, nejakých 9 až 10 kusov techniky. Prebiehali samozrejme v prvom rade záchranné práce a poskytovala sa prvá pomoc. Následne až po vyskratovaní vysokého napätia sa mohlo začať s hasebnými prácami, kde teda...
The stranded rail passengers were being transported by bus to the border town of Sturovo.
Nearly 200 pieces of Russian space junk threatened 7 astronauts aboard the International Space Station, forcing them to take shelter in their docked capsules and disrupting their work in the next couple of days. Large debris generating events in orbit are rare, but are becoming more worrying as space becomes crowded with satellite networks needed for everyday life on Earth. The Russian space agency Roscosmos did not respond to a request for comment.
A heatwave is spreading across the Italian peninsula. Starting this weekend, temperatures are expected to hit 34 degrees Celsius in northern regions, around 35 degrees in central areas and 40 degrees in the south. The peak, 42 degrees Celsius, is expected in Sicily. After a recent spell of bad weather, the sun is returning and temperatures will spike with a change of up to 15 degrees in some areas. But in the south, people are used to the heat and know how to deal with it.
Chi lavora deve sopportare il caldo, siamo a luglio, farà tanto caldo come ogni anno. Come si sopporta? Io col negozio aria condizionata, mangio cose fresche e cerco di andare avanti.
Persone anziane, scendere poco, l'indispensabile. Chi è costretto a scendere per strada deve bere molto. Chi può se ne va a mare e si va a fare una bella rinfrescata.
Local health authorities are prepared, especially to protect vulnerable people such as the elderly, who are often referred to emergency rooms with heat stroke.
Abbiamo aumentato le ore di disponibilità 7 giorni su 7, dalle 8 alle 20 per i codici in bassa complessità nei pronto soccorso. Abbiamo garantito 4 unità di continuità assistenziale di notte nei giorni festivi.
For the elderly, free phone numbers will also be available where they can ask for assistance and advice. Even small precautions can make the difference between enjoying a tranquil summer day and heat stroke.
Sicuramente tanta acqua, frutta, che comunque un po' di zucchero non guasta, e niente, ventaglio, che dobbiamo fare? Aria condizionata sì, ma nei limiti, perché poi dopo viene mal di schiena e altri problemi. Evitiamo.
Dopo qualche esitazione, il caldo, quello vero, è arrivato anche in Italia e soprattutto nelle regioni del sud raggiungerà anche i 40 gradi. Sembra scontato dirlo, ma parecchi non prendono le dovute precauzioni. Prima fra tutte, bere molta acqua. Luca Palamara per Euronews, Napoli.